Morning, afternoon, wherever you happen to be in the world. My name is Steve Falconbridge, and on the camera I'm once again with the WildEarthTV, and we are in the sun. We've decided to come out on safari live in the savannah. The temperature right now is 34 degrees Celsius and about 96 degrees Fahrenheit, so it is quite a warm day. We've decided to come and find the little prince, and guess what, folks? We have found him. The only bad news is that the little prince is taking up all the shade in the area. So we are sitting now currently in the warm sun. You can clearly see he's panting very, very hard. And he's not enjoying the heat. What can you do in conditions like this? You can pant. Cats do not have the ability to sweat. And he has not moved much from his previous position. We can still see the tree. We can still see a little bit of the kill in the tree. There's not too much of it. It's just dangling by a thread up there in the weeping wattle. In the sun as well, he's making a little bit of biltong, or for those of you who aren't familiar with biltong, dried jerky. It just needs a bit of salt up there, and the wind is drying it nicely for him in the sun. Doesn't seem to be any flies flying around the carcass, but definitely around him at the moment. Please feel free to send through your questions and comments on the hashtag Safari Live and follow the YouTube chat. We'd love to chat with you this afternoon. I believe a lot of you are happy to see the little prince, as we are. It's my first time seeing him since I've been back, or since my interview. He was glorious enough to grace himself with his presence on my interview to make for quite a glorious sighting. But look, folks, he's trying to sleep and panting, and look at those beautiful canines. Beautiful, beautiful teeth. You can still see the youngness of the animal by how clean those teeth are. There's no colouring on them. There's no plaque. Very, very good condition. And the three spots above the whiskers, as a lot of people like to identify leopards by those three spots, the top row. You can see there's three, and on the other side I think there's also three, if I'm not mistaken. Could be two. It's difficult to categorize or identify these animals by scratches on the face, because those scratches can change. They can get more. Notches on the ears definitely a good sign, but the spot pattern on the face is always quite a good one to use. Hello, Jake, and welcome. Yes, of course. What a majestic animal, you say. He is indeed. He is indeed. He is absolutely fantastic. Looking at him, his belly is looking quite full. You can imagine in this heat sitting in the sun, or he's got all the shade in the area, as I mentioned before, but he is very hot and very bloated. He just moved awkwardly a moment ago. His hips were on the other side. When cats get full like this, it's quite often difficult for them to lie down because their belly is so full, and often you'll see them roll on their back, exposing their underbelly. It also helps them with the cooling. There's no other cooling possible to him apart from the panting. And as you can see, he is covered in thick coat of golden fur. So folks, from a spotted cat to a stork with the saddle, we have James Henry on drive. To have fur or not to have fur, that is definitely the question. And this cat definitely does have fur, and the advantages I think James has been, or disadvantages James has been spelling out for you. Definitely the fur will help them in the winter months. In the summer months, yes, we would think it is definitely a disadvantage, but the winters get very, very cold here, and the nights the animals don't have anywhere to shelter themselves properly. They don't have homesteads like we do. I'm pretty sure millions of years ago we would have been a lot hairier than we are today. Some of us are still quite hairy, but we would have been much more of a hairier hominid back in the day before we invented the use of clothes. But this afternoon, folks, we've got the thoughts of possibly just staying here with Hosana for a little bit. Maybe he go up the tree again for a short while. Maybe he'll do some feeding. We're not too sure. You never know what might happen. We might have a visitor. You know, Tundi's close by in the area, possibly. A question there from Sea Control. Do you think they eat less when it's this hot? I don't know if they eat less. I think think they eat their fill and then they sit and digest it and then are worried or disappointed with themselves for eating so much. They definitely eat as much as they can in a sitting. And, there we go. There's the belly. He's told us he's had enough. Basically, after Christmas, do you think we eat? In South Africa, we have Christmases in the summer. So I've grown up eating lots and lots of food in the summer months. And I don't think I would eat more in the winter if it was the same spread. It's hard to say. Christmas for me has always been a very hot time of year. It's been a very, very hot time of year. And so I think we still eat a lot. It's all about the flavor. I think you might eat less when the food starts to get a little bit decrepit up in the tree there. It's sitting in the sun, it's exposed, it's become a bit, there doesn't seem to be too much flesh in it. It's only fur on there now. So to answer your question, I think they eat when they're hungry, and whether they eat less or more is debatable. It's all about hunger. When we look at animals, and if you think about yourselves, for example, when you come home from somewhere and you are hungry, you've all experienced this. You're so hungry you could kill somebody. This is what we're talking about, drivers and everything in an animal's behavior. Now, we talk about animals being fearful of something or being hungry or having a sexual interest in something. And if you think about an animal's drivers, each one of these, dependent on how strong each driver is in an animal's sort of makeup, will determine that animal's behavior. That's why when you look back in the past, whenever there's been attacks by wild animals, especially lions or leopards, on humans, you look at those animals that have eventually been caught and put out of their misery, and that animal is an old, injured, sick female or male with broken teeth, emaciated, and actually starving. So what has happened is their fear of man, which is a driver, has been outweighed by their hunger drive. So they are willing to actually do something that they wouldn't normally do because they are so hungry. So when we come home from someone who say we're so hungry we could kill, I'm sure we all understand that until you've had that little bit of food in you. My friend, actually, it's his birthday today, Neil Patterson in Johannesburg. He is one of the grumpiest men I know when it comes to not eating. And the best thing to do is just feed him very quickly, and his mood changes very quickly. If any of you out there can relate, let us know. But that is the truth with animals. That's why when males and female leopards or lions are mating, they generally don't seem to eat for a few days. But that's what makes them quite aggressive, because they seem to forget about food because they are so interested in the drive, the love drive that's going on, the need to mate, the sexual energy. And suddenly you can approach that animal, unbeknown to you, that animal becomes extremely aggressive, and you could potentially be attacked because that animal has suddenly realized that it's actually hungry, and that hunger drive suddenly jumps forward to the front of the blocks and outweighs the current sexual drive. So that is how humans are made up. How animals are made up, and it's always important to try and understand these things in animals, and to not try and judge, but just know that yes, the animal's hungry or it's not hungry. If an animal's sick, it's always very important to be very careful that behavior is not going to be the same as if that animal was in fully good, healthy condition. I hope that answers your question. But Hosana here is quite enjoying the comfortable grass, and he is hogging all the shade, folks. We are sitting nicely in this 95 degrees sunshine. So from a hot and sunny savanna in the south of South Africa, we are sending you all the way up to the Mara, where Taylor, I believe, is a little bit cooler than we are. And we are in the hot sun with the panting cat, from the coolness of the Mara to the heat of Djuma, the roar of the lion. Hosana is lying flat, folks. He's a bit irritated with some flies that are flying around his face, but isn't that just cute? He's such a cat when he rolls over like that. You almost think it would be possible to just walk up and scratch him on the belly, but don't be fooled, folks. This is a wild animal, and he is a magnificent one. I've seen lions and leopards do this. I've seen my dogs do it back in the day when flies are irritating them, and they snap and snap and snap and trying to catch the fly. But it is a very, very difficult job to do with a mouth that is half sleepy. So you can see by him rolling over like that, he's trying to expose the belly to a little bit of coolness. He's very, very full. And VM and I were just discussing, because we believe yesterday it was said that the kill in the tree is an impala. And then on chatting with James just before coming out, he believes it was a young wildebeest. And now VM is reckoning it's a young kudu, and I'm thinking it's a young nyala. So if anybody out there can have a look clearly at the picture and give us their opinion of what they think that might be. There are clearly some stripes on the body there, which I think eliminates wildebeest and impala. And the fur is quite brown and quite long. So between kudu and nyala, I think. Let's see what the viewers have to say. A good question from Francis is, how long will it take him to digest all the food? Now, I'm not sure how big this animal was that it ate. A young antelope, it seems probably between 15 and 20 kilograms. Now, a leopard can feed in one sitting on about 16 kilograms, so that's about 35 pounds or so of meat, 37 pounds of meat. That is a lot of food in one sitting. So quite easily he could have ingested half of that and then more, but it will probably take them a few days to really knock it down. But by feeding on such a huge amount of meat enables these cats, lions included, to go for a week, 2 weeks without feeding. Don't be fooled and think they will go that long without feeding. It just means that they can. Having a huge protein diet like that is also what it causes them to have such a sleepy nature. They have no vegetables going in. They have huge protein coming in, and it requires huge amounts of bodily energy to just lie there and digest it. So how long will it take fully to be digested? It's a difficult question to say, but I'd say he'd be up and moving away from here by tomorrow quite easily. But from the heat here and Hosana panting, we'll take you to another man who's just back from leave, Brent, up in the Mara. I believe he has something that runs quite fast. Let's see what he has for you in the cool of the Mara. And you're back with us. Not sure what's happened up in the Mara, but Hosana has got his head up a little bit. There was some movement coming from the drainage line just sort of to our right-hand side. He had his head up, was looking there for a little bit, but he is just now just panting again. Whatever was moving there definitely sparks his interest for the shortest of moments. We're also joined here by one of the other vehicles from Chitwa Plains. They've come in to chat with us as well, and we've had a little chat with Andrew there, one of the guides, and he assures us that the kill up in the tree was actually a young kudu. So it looks like the wildebeest, Mr. VM, was correct, but without too much left. Andrew said there was big ears, and it was the fur that gave it away, but I don't see any ears. There's definitely some fur, but the coloration makes it very difficult, folks. It was definitely not a kudu, definitely not a wildebeest or an impala. I believe Tristan has got that wrong before, so VM has told me that we should actually give him a little bit of a hard time for that. I hope he's watching somewhere out there. I do know he's got the afternoon off and is probably sitting by the pool watching the broadcast as we speak. I'm a little bit jealous of that, but just because of the coolness of the pool. But here we sit with the young prince. Where else in the world would we want to be? There's a comment there, I'm not sure who it's from, but do cats ever eat vegetation like dogs do? I have seen cats eat a little bit of grass, but purely to invoke a regurgitation. Cats will, if you've ever eaten grass before, it actually causes you to vomit, and cats will do it when they've got too much of a fur ball. After they've been grooming themselves, they lick themselves. They lick and lick and lick and clean and groom themselves. I believe that question was from William. And then they get lots of fur inside, and also the fur that they eat when they kill. They get a lot of fur inside of their stomach, and it's quite difficult for them to. They don't have a finger like some people, like we have, to stick down our throats and to induce vomiting. So they'll take in a bit of green grass, and it will cause them to vomit. I've seen that on quite a number of occasions, and it's all got to do with fur getting it out of the body. They're not able to digest the fur. I believe hyenas can actually ingest or digest fur and bone, but leopards don't ingest it. You'll often find some fur in the dung. You'll often find fur in the dung, but you'll never find you'll find blood and fur, but often not bone fragments in leopard dung. In dung, you'll find fur as well, and hyena dung very, very white because of the bones and the fur that they ingest. But often with lions, because they feed in quite such a strong sort of social unit, they feed quite aggressively. You'll quite often find them throwing up bone and fur, and it's quite an interesting thing to find. Sina asks the question, is it common for leopards to hang their prey up a tree? And in Africa, that is a very, very yes, very, very positive yes. Because of the competition with hyenas and lions here, you'll find that the leopards need to hang their prey up there, otherwise they would lose it quite quickly. An animal like that, I mentioned earlier, leopards can feed maybe 16 kilograms, 34, 35 pounds in a sitting. They don't need to do that because they can put the prey up in the tree. If they don't put it up in the tree, hyenas will pick up on that smell or smell that from a distance. They'll come and find the leopard quite early on in the evening, and they'll steal it from them. Lions as well. I'm not saying lions aren't able to climb trees, but because leopards are quite small and agile, they're able to get up to the very tall, weakest of branches in the tree that lions struggle to climb up to because their weight is more than double that of the leopard. So definitely they do tree their prey. And an interesting note, in India, a friend of mine who works there, the leopards there, a subspecies of this leopard, do not tree their prey purely because they don't have the competition that these leopards have here. So some leopards aren't able to tree their food purely because they probably kill something that's too big for them. And often I found female leopards or younger leopards underneath a tree with a large male impala or something like that they haven't been able to get up the tree. Quite often they'll feed on it for a few hours or even a day, and then once it loses a bit of that volume or that weight, they'll then try get it up the tree. But years ago, when I worked in the Kruger Park for Singita, there was a leopard there called the Hosana Male, and he's just probably one of the most hardcore male leopards I've ever seen. He used to kill female waterbuck and put them in the tree, and that for me was just unbelievable. A waterbuck in the tree, and we found it more than once. Whether he took the animal up there directly or whether he fed on a bit before taking it up, it's hard to say, because each time we found it, the animal was partly consumed up the tree. But a waterbuck weighing in, I've got to have a look at the stats here, but I'm sure it's probably close to 400 pounds, probably about 200 kilograms, maybe a bit less than that. How he got that up the tree, that's double his weight, more than double his weight. And the leopard, pound for pound, the strongest. If you had the size of a lion's body, it would be the strongest cat known to man. These things are unbelievable climbers. Francis is interested to know whether there's been any eagles coming in to take advantage of the kill, and I've never seen an eagle actually climb into the tree with the kill. You'll often find tawny eagles or battaliers hanging around hoping for some scraps to maybe fall. I've never seen them physically go into the tree. It's possible that one of the other guys out there, maybe James knows, maybe he's seen that before. To be honest, my experience with leopards and treeing is quite limited. Being my first time working in the Sabi Sands, this is the place of the leopards. This is where they do all their work. Definitely vultures and eagles will come on the scene. The beauty about treeing from leopards is that it actually hides the prey animal from vultures. Vultures aren't able to see the animal there, and it's only really the keenest of eyes from the tawny eagle, or the best eyes of them all, the battalier eagle, that's able to find these carcasses. But the secret nature of the leopard, camouflaged as he is, he likes to camouflage his food as well, eliminates the competition. It's why they are so successful. It's why they can survive absolutely anywhere, even close to Pretoria still, in the northern parts of South Africa, around Johannesburg, north of Johannesburg. Yes, we are pulling a Tristan and a James, sitting very still, but it would be nice to have had some shade like those two gentlemen, I believe, had when they were sitting in this position. And I was quite interested to hear James' idea of getting old Ronald to float, and I was thinking of an appropriate name would be Ronald Duck. Sorry, I'm laughing at my own joke there. So, folks, we are back with the little prince. He is lying in the grass now, and I thought I might go back to a story I was talking about last night of my first ever leopard encounter. It was with a male leopard, a similar sort of situation to this. He had a kill, except it was a bit of a drainage line. And the male leopard was probably about 200 pounds, about 90 kilograms or so. A very, very big male leopard, quite renowned in the area. And I had unwittingly stumbled upon his kill when I climbed out of the vehicle, and I was probably about as close as we are now to him, except I got out of the car, which was the wrong thing to do. And the thoughts are, you could be walking along here and the kill could have fallen out of the tree. Guys coming to try and relocate on this position. The kill might have fallen down. You think you're in the right area. You're looking for the right weeping wattle. There's one there. There's one there. There's a few more over there, and you're not quite sure. So what do? We climb out the car and we have a little look, and we need to be aware of what we're looking for. See, took me quite a few years to figure out. I think it was day 2, a conservation student in the Kruger Park when that happened to me. So those subtleties were not yet developed inside of my psyche, or I didn't have that sixth sense, as you call it. And if you can imagine, this cat is lying flat on the ground. The one that I approached, it was in a drainage line. The temperatures were quite cool. I think still feeding. And the kill had been in the tree when the guys had left him, and I got there and the kill had obviously fallen down, so I didn't find one in the tree, and then he came at me out of the long grass. Very similar sort of conditions with the grass color now, quite thick, lots of vegetation, and a leopard can move at an extremely fast charging speed. Now, if you had to work that out, a leopard charging speed at about 80 to 90 kilometers an hour. Now, folks, that's 50 to 56 miles an hour that this animal can go over a very short period. That's 22 to 24 meters. Is quite similar to yards, or you can translate it to 73 or 79 feet per second. Now, that is incredibly fast. And we're moving at a speed like that. It is not just running, it is making this enormous growl that's coming from the depths of its belly, as if a demon itself is rising out of the drainage line, and it's somehow managed to hit the floor and smack the ground as it moves. It is an unbelievable sound and an unbelievable feeling that one experiences. Obviously, Hosana is not behaving like that right now, but that can happen quite quickly with a wild leopard if you do not pay attention to the rules. If you do not do what you're supposed to do, these animals, we are right upon him, folks. We drove into probably about 10 or 20 meters, probably about 30, 40 yards from him, and then he was just there. So most people, if you're walking, how would you see this animal lying there? He would notice you there, he'd be flat down, he'd be giving you these signals of don't come in and... Very confusing that you have hares active in the day. I find that very strange. But Hosana is up, and he's down again. He has been sitting up and looking at us for the longest time. We've just been gazing into his beautiful golden eyes for a very long time now, and he got up and had a scratch behind the ear, and he's now moved a few feet away and lying down in exactly the same sort of shade he's been in the entire time. So he's panting, and I'm quite perplexed. I wonder if James had any answers for why the hares were active and mobile this time of day. That's not something I've seen. I've spooked hares out of their little warrens or hidden areas before, but that's just to get a fright. I've never seen them running around in the daytime. I think that's quite unique. I'm not sure if it's just something that happens here in the Sabi Sands, but it's not something I've seen before. And the beautiful prince is looking off into the distance. The flies are still bothering him. They have been bothering him for some time. He hasn't managed to catch one yet, but you can see the ears go flat there. You see there was this little sign of annoyance there. It's all about body language with these animals, and you can see a change in behavior with a leopard quite quickly. We were talking before when you were with me last about how the signs that you need to look for, and when it comes to leopards, the first sign you need to look for is you need to be able to hear, because you will hear a leopard long before you see it if it is not happy with you. And then after if you get past the hearing stage and you actually see the leopard, ears that are flat and a head that is low is another very, very big sign, and a flicking tail. You can see his tail's flicking a bit now, but that's just a natural sort of flick that he's doing as he's moving, maybe try and flick the flies away, but a flicking from side to side or a thrashing, a very deliberate movement, is something that is also very, very important to understand if you ever are approaching these animals from a distance or on foot. Most of the leopards in the Sabi Sands are very, very relaxed. I've spent a lot of time in the past habituating leopards that had never seen vehicles before, leopards that just the first sign of a vehicle and they would just take off into the bushes. And the objective with habituating, if any of you are familiar with it or have not heard of before, let me try and just give you some information. The idea is not to influence the animal, to follow the animal to the point where it realizes that you are not influencing it. It seems like quite a converse sort of point, that, but if you can follow an animal and let it relax. So what I mean is that if you see a leopard and it shows you any sign of something and you switch off the vehicle and it slowly relaxes, then you can switch the vehicle on again, and if it shows any signs of distress, you switch the vehicle off again. You can do that repeatedly. It can take weeks, it can take months, it can take quite a bit of time, but if you do it deliberately and you do it without influence, crossing that so-called line and the animal to run away, eventually the animal is relaxed. It realizes this big hunk of metal is not actually there to cause it any harm. It can't eat it. It's not chasing, it's not hurting, it's not stealing its food. Eventually, over time, it realizes, okay, I'm just going to sit here and do my thing. So I was very fortunate to have done a bit of that back in the day, but I didn't see the fruits of it. By the time I left Singita, the leopards were starting to become relaxed. And what happened there, I think 3 months after I left, one of the leopards that we got quite relaxed, I think her name was called the Shinkilingan female, named after a fever tree. Just after I left, she happened to have a cub, and then the whole process went from habituation to habituated. So once you've got an adult habituated, like what has happened in the Saga Sands, 50, maybe even 60 years, the leopards have gotten used to vehicles here. It's why we have such an abundance of them. It's why we have leopards, as some people would say, on tap. Lots of leopards to view here. It's because their mother, their grandmother, was habituated. So they were born, like you're seeing Tandi now with her cub. Whenever the vehicles see her, the cub doesn't seem too worried. For example, if any of you have kids out there, if you're walking down the street and your child is holding your hand and mum sees something in front of her, or an individual who's going to do harm, mother's going to react in some way. It might be a squeeze of the hand, it might be a body posture, it might be a sound. Whatever that might be, the child is going to react to that. Leopards, lions are all exactly the same. They basically look at mum, and mum is not reacting. Basically, if Hosana here was a female and the cub was nearby, the posture that Hosana is giving us is one of complete non-interest. So the cub would look at mom, an example here being Hosana, and see that there's nothing to worry about, and will slowly relax and will very, very quickly become habituated, versus an adult leopard that you have to physically move around and follow for quite a period of time until they eventually become used to the vehicle. So it is a process, and it does take some time. It does take a lot of patience, but once you have done this, it is beautiful. But please, folks, never forget that a habituated leopard is not a tame animal. Leopards are not tame. They are not zoo. They are completely wild, and if I had to climb out of the vehicle now, things would change completely. And maybe because I'm on the opposite side of the vehicle, there wouldn't be too much of a response because he wouldn't really see me. But if I climbed out and took a step towards him, the animal would suddenly go from seeing this box that has gotten very used to seeing this bipedal man, this two-legged, upright, standing human that for a very long time has competed with them. They are genetically encoded to have a fear for the human race, to have a fear for the hunter-gatherer that for a very long time competed with them with stick and spear. So the temperatures are still quite warm, but Hosana is enjoying it in the shade. There's a slight breeze that is picking up now coming in from the east, which is really, really pleasant. We've been looking quite hard at that carcass in the tree, and if we can have another look at it, you'll notice that there's practically nothing left. It's merely skin, and there's a couple little bits of meat, but I wouldn't say there's much left on there. not much. There's some bones. You could probably make a nice stew out of the bones and maybe a nice pelt out of the fur, but when it comes to meat, I think he's done eating, and when it cools down, he'll probably move away from this area to go and have a drink. But folks, we are sitting here in the sun. We're going to stay with Hosana for a little while longer, going to see what he gets up to, but we're going to go over to Mrs. McCurdy, who is bumbling up in the Mara. And he hasn't moved at all, folks. He is still lying down. He actually just stood up and had a little ablution. We must apologize for any technical issues we might be experiencing on the other side there. But we're still here. We're still live with Hosana, the little prince, who has not moved much from having what we think was a little break. He is doing what he's doing. We are still here waiting for your questions and comments, folks. Anything of interest you'd like to talk about this afternoon? The sun, we've repositioned ourselves, so we're feeling a little bit more comfortable. There's another fly there to bother him. We're in the shade, which is lovely now. The shade of the tree, same tree as him. A commensalistic symbiotic relationship. If any of you out there are familiar with symbiotic relationships, when two organisms interact, and in this case we are benefiting, as so is Hosana, from the shade of the tree, of the wattle tree, weeping wattle tree, and the tree is not being negatively affected. And in the same sentence, Hosana used the tree for hoisting of the animal that he fed on, and no negative effects apart from maybe a few claw marks and maybe a new little arrangement, almost like his own little butcher's Christmas tree with a pelt. Except there's only one decoration. We believe, after chatting with Andrew earlier, that the carcass was actually somewhere else earlier today or yesterday, and he moved it to a little bit more accessible position. So it's possibly why James and Tristan weren't able to fully identify what it was. It was a little bit mixed up in the foliage there. And as we know, this is a beautiful toilet paper tree. Lots of little leaves, lots of fine leaves, and quite difficult to see through them. Where we've positioned ourselves now, we can't really even see the carcass anymore. And there they are, very, very nice frilly trees. Remember, folks, don't confuse this with the sickle bush, which has got the very sharp spines. Well, this is the one that you could use as a toilet paper. I mentioned it on my walk the other day. The poor man's toilet paper comes in quite handy if you are in need of the loo, with a view out here in the wilderness, which often happens, without leaving behind some messy toilet paper. Kathy asks if I've ever seen a leopard catch a fly. No, I have not. I've seen them swat at many and bite at many, but never catch one. And I've seen lions catch not a fly, but a quail that happened to be very close by. It seems to just swat at it and then put it in the mouth and chewed it. But a dog I used to have years ago, I've seen catch many flies. Jack Russells like to run around. A friend of mine's got Jack Russells, and they run around catching flies and then chew them up and then just drop them on the floor. They are very, very funny little animals, Jack Russells, full of energy, and they do not like flies or rats, I believe. Very, very good for instance, if you have a rat problem in your house, you want to get rats out of the building, Jack Russells are apparently the go-to. There's a lovely breeze coming from behind us now. Can feel it coming in from the east. It's picked up a little bit. You can see it in the movement of the trees. Really is one of the godsends out here. These hot African afternoons, cool breeze coming in. Definitely what relieves the heat and just the humidity that sits around us. When the vegetation is this green after some rainfall, there's this thick moisture of humidity that sits in the air, and without any movement of air, it just sits there and you basically just soak in it. Hosana's got the right idea. He's keeping low to the ground, nice and cool there on the floor in the grass. The grass is probably even moist, probably even a little bit still damp from yesterday. The sun would have risen kind of behind us, and or sort of a little bit to, behind us to the right, and he's kind of been in shade where he is now, nice and green area. Would have been in the shade most of the day. But I believe this morning there's quite a lot more of that meat on that carcass, which Andrew, the guide before, indicated was a kudu, a young kudu, and there's not much left, as I said in the previous segment. So I think the technical issues have been sorted out with Mr. Henry, and we're going to go back to where he has got the big Panthera, the Panthera Leo. You're back with us again, folks. Nothing much has really changed here. Apologies again for the stream issues that we're experiencing. Hosana has not done anything really since you've been back. He's lifted his head just now as you've come back with us, but he's still panting heavily, looking into the distances. Not much to be seen. He's looking straight at the tree, and there's quite low vegetation around, so his interests are basically just on panting and digesting. That is what he's doing. Have any of you ever had a huge Christmas dinner? What do you do after that? You just want to digest, especially if it's hot. Those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, have you ever had a huge Christmas dinner in the summertime? It is something to behold. We used to go to the beach every single year for our Christmas, and yeah, lots of food, lots of eating, and then lots of sleeping in the heat. So I'm quite used to it. This is what we do out here. Summertime, we definitely do enjoy the heat, but it'd be nice to have a nice bit of cooling off in the shade. Movement to the back here was actually a really, really good idea. Hosana's enjoying the shade. We're enjoying the shade. Any comments or questions, folks? We're dying to communicate with you out there. I don't know if you guys, ladies and gentlemen, can hear the birds. We had some just before. They've moved off. We had some birds flying above us. Now we've got the call of a white-browed scrub robin. Oh, look at that. William, that's a fantastic shot. Some sort of dragonfly. I'm trying to get a good look. Moves his body. Looks almost like... very hard to say unless he turns a little bit. I know that Tristan has been doing a lot of work on his dragonflies. I wonder if anyone can take a screenshot of that and tweet it through for him, see if he can ID it there. I don't have a dragonfly book on me at the moment, and I'm by no means an expert. But we've actually had quite a lot of dragonfly activity around here. It's possible that there are small little midges or small little insects that have been coming off of the carcass, because there's been a huge abundance of dragonflies flying in and around. And as we all know, or if we didn't know, dragonflies are very predatory, and they're actually hunting. This time of year, the males and females are actively hunting and looking for mates. Right, once they're well fed, they'll find a mate and then a suitable water source. Folks, he is up. He is moving a little bit, but I'm not sure where he's going. There's no shade there, my boy. No shade at all. He is repositioning in even less shade than he had before. So that is quite perplexing, but maybe he's looking for a little bit more of a comfortable bed. That was a great shot, Vim, of the dragonfly. This time of year, yes, we've got lots of insects. It's very wet, very green. The dragonflies would be hunting and looking for mates, and then they deposit their packages, their eggs into the water, and then they get the larvae will hatch in the water. And it's a very interesting life cycle where dragonflies have adults outside the water and juveniles inside the water. We call it hemi-metabolic B, which means they are separated in space. They're not separated. You get a lot of grasshoppers, which is also hemi-metabolic. It's quite a tongue twister, and they actually lay their eggs in the grass. The adults and the nymphs will basically utilize the same habitat, it's the same niche, whereas dragonflies eliminate that competition by laying their eggs in the water, and then their larvae or their nymphs in the water are also highly predatory in the water. Very, very good indicators of stream health and stream condition. And back when I was doing my studies, we were doing what we called SAS, which was South African River Health Assessment, and you're looking at certain organisms in the water. Because if you're looking at water health, you can't just take a water sample, because Farmer Brown might be dumping his pollutants in the water at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that water flushes downstream. By the time you take a sample, it is not actually relevant. But if you take an analysis of the insects that are in the water, and dragonfly larvae and damselfly larvae are very good indicators of a healthy river system. If you start finding fly larvae and maggot larvae, then you know that there's something going wrong in the environment. Paula, that is a question I have no idea the answer to. How often do dragonflies mate? This time of year, what I'm thinking is that the dragonflies mate and they deposit the egg package in the water, and then that it's done. And then a new generation generates and comes forward. But I actually do not know the answer to that. I apologize. There we go. VM, you've got him again. VM is the dragonfly spotter. I do not know the answer to that. I know that when they do mate, the male and female attach to each other, and as they fly down to the water, they fly down together, and as she deposits the eggs, he is fertilizing them at the exact same time, so he's ensuring that those eggs are fertilized by him. But look at that, the easy way to identify dragonflies versus damselflies. The dragonfly sits with his wings out like that, quite flat, whereas the damselfly folds them up behind it on the back, and also the damselflies are very more dainty. As a damsel in distress, more dainty, a little easy to remember, a little bit smaller, but there are a wide variety of species out there, especially in South Africa. There are plenty of species, and this time of year it would be good to do a little document on them. I know Tristan is very busy with that, so I'm very looking forward to picking his brain on all the dragonfly information he's coming with. Beautiful, beautiful. So the difference between the nymph and the adult, obviously the nymph is in the water, but the legs and the body parts are completely different. The nymph is almost like a jet-propelled boat underneath the water. It actually takes the water in through its mouth and sort of propels it out behind it and moves through the water like an outboard motor or an inboard motor. And as it's coming towards metamorphosis, it kind of crawls up onto a stick, kind of like what you're seeing now, and then it kind of goes through like a pupa stage, and that kind of breaks open, and out comes this beautiful creature with the wings. It's quite something to see, and you can quite often see the remains of the larvae, the casing of the larvae sitting on sticks just at the water's edge from where the adults have emerged. So I'm pretty sure that during the rainy season you get a number of breeding times, but I do not know the answer to your question, Debbie. Andy is a fisherman, and he always regards a dragonfly landing on the rod as a good luck. Indeed, I do believe that is a good luck charm. We're having good luck right here. We have a dragonfly sitting on a little stick next to us. We are not fishing. We are watching a leopard, but indeed, I think that is something that if you believe you're going to get good luck, I think it is a very, very good omen. Dragonflies are remarkable little creatures, and as I said before, very good indicators of a good ecosystem. And if you are fishing next to a river with dragonflies, the fish you're catching, are eating and surviving in a healthy system. So that's a good sign to look out for. So you could think of them as an indicator of what we call ecosystem health. Just like frogs, because the dragonfly has got an amphibious lifestyle where the juvenile lives in the water and the adult comes out, just like frogs, the tadpole lives in the water and the adult comes out. So if you start looking at rivers, you're not finding frogs, you're not finding dragonflies, you have a serious problem. Those are the first two species you're going to see disappearing or declining if there's pollution. And when I talk about pollution, it's not just chemicals, it's chemicals from industry, it's chemicals and pollutions from agriculture, human waste, bad sewage systems. These are things that are a problem with the growing human population that we have at the moment. So back over to Hosana over there. He is flat. He is not doing much at all. And we have got Mr. Henry with a buffer species that does very well for feeding. We thought we were going to get some action there. He was showing signs of interest. He got up, he moved about 2 meters. His ears were forward, he was focused. And then, as I spoke before about the drivers, his drive to sleep was greater than his drive to eat. Paula would like to know how far a leopard can see, and it's a very difficult question because, the bush is quite thick. I mean, I know for a fact that cheetah can see a human being from about 300-400 meters away in an open area with no problem. They can identify a person walking from that distance. I know that because we habituated cheetah years ago in the Kruger Park that saw a person from about 400 meters and ran away, hell for leather, in the opposite direction. As I spoke earlier, that he perceived the upright standing human and was very afraid. But leopards, I reckon, have got a vision probably better than us. The distance probably equal in distance to us, but because they are black and white vision, they don't pick up the detail as well as we do. They don't pick up the depth, they pick up shape. They're mainly going for shape. They rely a lot on their hearing. The hearing is what keys them towards things, and then when they pick up certain shapes walking through the environment, that's probably what is the biggest cue for them. There was an experiment at a reserve I was working at a couple of years ago. A professor was out from a university in the States, I forget which one, but they were trying to ascertain the search image that animals have, and this experiment was with lions, and they had these cut-out cardboard shapes of impala. There was no color to it. It was just a cut-out impala shape that you could quite easily draw against the wall, for example, that two-dimensional impala, and then have dragged it behind the vehicle. And it was quite incredible that it was not a real animal, but the lions actually chased this thing. It was a little bit more of a playful chase than a real chase, but there was definitely an interest and intrigue in the animal's behavior towards this shape. So we know that lions and leopards don't see color through their ability to see at night. You need black and white vision. It amplifies the ability to see in very poor light and to see at night, so they don't see color. We know that depth perception is important to see color or to see shapes, and we see depth. That's why we can spot a kudu and a nyala in the bushes. But if a nyala or a kudu is standing very, very still in thick vegetation, a leopard or a lion, as we believe, probably will not see it. That's how evolution has worked. That's how the animal has managed to get to where it is now. If they were visible and the strategy didn't work, they would have abandoned it a long time ago, and everything would just be white or something like that standing out in the environment. But they all need to blend in. Even the leopard, if you look at the coloration of him, that coloration is designed to blend him in directly. And in the winter months, when the conditions change here slightly and the vegetation gets lower, the coloration that he has, if you take a photo of him lying like that in about 3-4 months and you change it to black and white filter, you probably wouldn't really see the shape of the animal at all. It'll just blend away into that background. So that's what it's all about. That's what the visual is there for. And black and white vision, definitely a big difference in how animals operate. And you can tell which animals are night vision. Those predators, all predators that I know of are nocturnal vision. They need to see at night. They need to see black and white. We know the difference in eyes. There's been a lot of scientific dissections of animals and their eyes, and we know rod cells and cone cells. And if you're not familiar with this term before, rod cells are just these long rods that are situated in the eye, and we as humans have got rod cells. They are pretty much on the outside of our eye, not in the middle. The middle is cone cells in the shape of a cone, and the cone is designed to pick up color. It's almost like a pyramid. It sort of filters the light through. We get different degrees of color. We're able to see it. We see depth, whereas rod cells, we only see black and white. So on the outside of our eyes, any of you out there, if you haven't done this before, do an experiment for yourself before you go to bed. Switch off all the lights and walk through your house and see if you can find the light switch by looking directly at it. I guarantee you will have to walk sideways or look sideways to find whatever it is you're looking for, and you will actually be able to see what you're looking for because of those rod cells on the outside of your eye. You should try that. It works quite well. It's quite similar to walking outside at night. We can't see directly in front of us. We are completely night blind in front, but your peripheral vision picks up some movement, some light, brings in more light into to our vision. But with no rod cells in the middle of our eye, we don't see very well at night. Hence we are in houses or we're in caves, and that's where we spend our time. So we're going to stay here, folks, with Hosana. Maybe another Franklin or Spurfowl will come past and give him another bit of energy. But we're going to go over to Mr. Henry, who I believe is in the process of trying to find something. Thank you, James, and I believe you've had a wonderful afternoon with some amazing scrub hare sightings, and been chatting about baboons and low-ranking males, and here we are back with a beautiful spotted cat, Hosana, the little prince. He was up for a moment, folks. There's some kudu coming back. Just now, we had kudus coming in the scene, and he had spotted them, but they moved away. And now they seem to be coming back, but he doesn't seem to have any idea that they're there. The wind is actually in their favor. It's blowing from him towards them. But it was, there you can see the ears. Some young juveniles. These are perfect sort of candidates for a leopard of Hosana's size. Just see the 1-year-old horns on those kudus there. They came through a moment ago and then they disappeared, as kudus do. Exactly what I was talking about before with the colorations. Even with our depth perception and our colorability, we lost them. And VM was agreeing with me that as a filmmaker, they do a lot of black and white film to get the focus, but they couldn't do it out in the bush because you can't see the animals. So that backs up the theory I was talking about with the lens or the rods and the cone cells. And the kudus are slowly making their way towards sort of in a north direction. I'm not sure if they're coming directly here, but as you can see, the little prince has absolutely no idea that only probably about 100 yards away, we've got a few kudu slowly but surely meandering in his direction. Whether they know that their offspring is up in the tree, maybe they are coming to pay respects, thinking that it is time that the leopard has moved off and they will come and pay their homage. That does not happen in kudu. It does happen in elephant though, and the little prince still hasn't moved. Is he hungry? I don't think so. Well, he's up now. What has he seen? What is going on in his mind? It's definitely a lot cooler now, folks. You can tell by the shadows. He is completely out from the shade now, and there's no sun on him now. So it's definitely that nice, cool time of the day, and we've been very fortunate. We've spent the afternoon here with him. We've watched his fat belly, and we've got some amazing visual of him, and this has been amazing stuff for myself.